Bear with me for 1 second while this loads, and then I'm going to exit out on it so it doesn't create a bunch of background noise.
All right.
Okay, you're good to go.
All right, thanks. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to round 2 of the state competition. My name is Charlie Wellman. I'll be the presiding judge in this round. I would like all timekeepers and team members to put your videos on so we can do a conflict check. Okay, for a scoring panelist, do you see anyone with which you believe you have a conflict?
No.
No.
Okay, team members, do you see any of the, you'll see that I'm shown as presiding judge and the others are shown as scoring judges. Do you see any conflicts with us as the scoring judges or otherwise? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to let them know we have no conflicts. And we'll start a couple of preliminary things, but we won't start the round until we get it all clear here. So, okay, as I said, my name is Charlie Wellman, and I do things a little bit differently when I preside in mock trial. It's just because I think it's good. If I was trying a case in real life, I'd want to know who my scoring panelists are. So I introduce myself and a little bit about my background. And then I'm going to ask each of the scoring panelists to do the same, so you know who you're trying to. I'm a former high school mock trial coach. I coached for about 20 years and have coached at all levels of mock trial, doing that, and not at college, but in high school. I'm also a practicing attorney, and I do a fair amount of complex civil litigation. And I guarantee I've been practicing longer than probably twice as long as most of you have been alive. So I'm an old guy. Chad.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. I work at the Colorado Attorney General's office. I do environmental work, a lot of water issues. So I do sort of complex litigation, generally with the federal government or with other states. I've been in this office for a bit over 20 years. So I'm excited to see how you all present the case today. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Kelsey.
My name is Kelsey Madden. I'm a deputy district attorney in Denver. I have competed myself in mock trial for 11 years. That was all of high school, all of college, all of law school. I've coached a college team, coached law school teams. I've now judged more competitions than I can count. All that to say, just I love watching it, and it's really fun to come back to competitions I was in back in high school too.
Thanks, Kelsey. Jason.
Yes, hi. I'm Jason. I go to law school at DU, and I currently work for the district attorney's office at the 18th district. And I also compete in mock trials across the country. So we're actually heading to the national trial competition finals in Fort Worth next week. So getting ready for that. Excited to watch you guys compete.
Good luck next week. Okay, let me cover some preliminary things, and I'm still waiting for the all clear, but we'll go through most of those things first. You're all reminded, but first of all, is there anyone in this Zoom room other than a team member or timekeeper? There's no coaches or parents, is that correct? And if one member of each team will confirm that for me, I would appreciate it. Who's
Yes.
your opener? And go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes, Your Honor. It is solely our team members and our timekeeper.
Okay, and somebody from Team Creed?
Yes, we only have our other non-competing team members and coaches.
That's fine. No coaches.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, do you have coaches in the room or not?
No, they are only watching the live stream.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So just a couple reminders. I'm sure you all know this, having done mock trial. There'll be no recess excepting for cases of emergencies, health emergency or otherwise. We will proceed through this fairly quickly. If you have any disputes arising out of the competition, you need to bring those up before we close the competition. And you do that at the end after all the closing arguments have been presented. And I said the case is over. And if you have if I don't remember and you have a rule violation you want to bring up, please let me know. I usually remember, but I sometimes forget to do that at the end because it's so seldom that actually happens. But don't hesitate if you feel there is one. You're also reminded that strict compliance with the time requirements is considered in judging your individual performances. Okay, let me just tell you a little bit about procedure. I think it helps if you know how to handle these matters. There'll be obviously a direct and a cross. There can be a redirect. And if there is a redirect, I will allow a recross. Remember, redirect and recross have to be within the scope of the preceding exchange. In other words, if you're redirect, it's got to be related to the cross. If you recross, it has to be related to the redirect. And I'm not going to control that. That would be an objection that the other team would bring up if they do that. With respect to objections, if you make an objection, please say objection, pause for a second, and then I will say, okay, what is your objection? I ask you to state your objection. I'll then give the other team the chance to respond, and then the person making the objection will get a chance to reply. And absent something extraordinary, that's probably all I'm going to allow. It keeps the competition moving. You guys probably want to eat dinner at some point tonight, so we don't want this to go too late at night. Any questions about those procedures? Okay. So let's start with trying to remember who the Team Todd is the plaintiff. I see. If you would introduce yourselves, your team members, in every way you want to do that.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Elizabeth Kugler, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and I will also be delivering closing arguments on behalf of the plaintiff. At this time, may my co-counsel and our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Certainly.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Alex Kugler, and today I'll be conducting the direct examination of Carson Durst, the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt, as well as providing the opening statement for the plaintiff.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Keely Anderson, and today I'll be doing the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers and the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marina Eisenstadt, and today I am Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon. My name is Zoe Kugler, and today I am Carson Durst.
Good afternoon. My name is Emma Steffel, and today I am Casey Rogers.
And our timekeeper.
My apologies. I'm Kai Solter, and I'm the timekeeper.
Thank you very much. Team Creed.
Good afternoon. I am Shannon Sachs. I will be doing the opening, the direct of Dr. Devin Williams, and the cross of Dr. Casey Rogers. And at this time, I would like my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Ashley Dunn. I will be doing the direct of Skylar Weirs, the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs, as well as the closing.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the jury. I am Ian Duran, and I will be directing Miss Doncourt today and cross-examining Carson Durst. May my witnesses introduce themselves?
Certainly.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jada Friedman, and I will be playing Blake Doncourt today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sophia Suisa, and I'll be playing Skylar Weirs today.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Chloe Castaneda, and I'll be playing Dr. Devin Williams today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And we have a timekeeper.
Cheeseman, and I will be the timekeeper.
Dakota, I don't necessarily need to hear you, but I had some difficulty hearing you. So if you do need to speak up, feel free to, make sure your volume is up. And also, timekeepers, feel free. I don't know how you want to do it. You either can post it in the chat, or you can put your screens on to show the time. Generally, Once we do oaths here in a few minutes, what we'll have you do is the person presenting, the person crossing, and the witness will be the only videos on to try to avoid confusion. We will have the scoring panelists keep their videos on so you can see the scoring panelists. Timers, I will ask you and scoring panelists between each segment if you're ready to proceed. However, if you get behind, anybody gets behind, just somebody say, hey, hold on a second. I don't not want to rush anybody, and timing is very important, so I don't want to make that a problem either. Any questions about procedure? Okay, so everybody videos out, and we're gonna do swear it in, and then we'll move from there. All the team members will raise their right hands. Do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Not if you're not, okay. All right. Witnesses, raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Give me a thumbs up if that works, everybody. Okay. All right. We don't have any gallery members, but scoring panelists, do you raise your right hand? Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and the rules of mock trial competition? Nods, yes. Okay. Okay, with that, plaintiff, preliminary matters.
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff does have a few brief preliminary matters. We request that due to the virtual setting, lawyers may remain seated for direct, cross, and objections.
That's acceptable, and both teams don't have to have requests that. You also can stand if you want. If this were a real trial, so you can move about to the courtroom, but since you probably can't move very far from your camera, that isn't working also. But feel free to stand or sit, that you're not going to be judged based on what you do.
Yes, Your Honor. We would also ask that timekeepers use their discretion in stopping time in the event of technological difficulties.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. If there are technological problems, somebody let me know in the chat. Make sure you let me know verbally. And timekeepers, if there is that, immediately stop and let me know you stop, so we know we're not trying to take advantage of the time there either. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, Your Honor. And given the virtual nature of the proceedings, we would request that during the admission of evidence, the witnesses be constructively shown the case materials they have been provided in order to identify them for admission. And once identified and admitted, and with the court's permission, co-counsel will then publish the exhibit to the jury.
That's fine. And for publication, we all have the case materials and the exhibits, so just identify them. And you say, may we constructively publish to the jury, and most likely I'll give permission to the jury that can look at those exhibits. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, Your Honor. And we would lastly request that any time remaining for closing statements may be used for a rebuttal close.
Granted.
Thank you. The plaintiff has no further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any preliminary matters?
No, Your Honor. All our preliminary matters have been addressed.
Great. Okay. So all the witnesses are reminded they're under oath. I'll try to do that at each witness. But if I forget, remember you're under oath. Scoring panelist all ready? I haven't got it all clear, but I'm assuming by now I would know if there was any problem. Let me just check it real quickly. And we can start with opening statements. Sorry, I've lost my cursor. There we go. All right, ready to go. Would the plaintiff like to present their opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, can everybody see and hear me all right?
I certainly can, yes. I think everyone else is nodding yes, you're good to go.
May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. We are here today because of Lush Fertilizer's decisions to cut costs, cut corners, and ultimately cut the future of Dakota Weirs short. Dakota Weirs was an active member of her community. Between volunteering her time at a local homeless shelter and participating in National Honor Society and student government, she had many interests. Her passion, however, was playing the piano. When she played, it brought her closer to her grandfather, who introduced her to the piano, sat beside her as she practiced, and now, sadly, is gone. Her hard work and passion led her closer to her dreams of attending Juilliard and becoming a concert pianist. Now, those dreams have been taken from her. Like many teens, Dakota spent her summers working at her job. At Haven Landscaping, she was in charge of spreading seed and fertilizing. Little did she know that the revolutionary new product she was using was going to lead to her being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer, at the age of 20. This new product, manufactured by Lush Fertilizer, was supposed to provide greener lawns with fewer applications and even be better for the environment. But Lush had a dark secret. It contained a chemical compound known as Drufo. Today, you will see and hear clear evidence that the chemical compound Drufo caused Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You'll hear testimony from former Lush employee Carson Durst, who was inside the company when this product was being developed, an employee who repeatedly tried to raise the alarm with both Lush Fertilizer and Blake Doncourt, the company's CEO. You'll hear expert testimony from Dr. Casey Rogers, who will carefully explain to you how her study verifies what Lush and the company already knew, that their new chemical compound, Drufo, causes cancer. Most importantly, you will hear testimony from Dakota Weirs herself, who was given no clear warning, no hint that the fertilizer she was using was going to cut her future short. Finally, you will hear from Blake Doncourt, Lush's own CEO, who will admit to you that they knew the fertilizer carried with it a risk. Moreover, they will admit there was a way to make this fertilizer 100% safe for humans, just by placing it in an oven and baking it. But it was going to cost money, and Blake Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer felt that it was going to cost too much money. And so they cut corners, they cut costs, and in the end, those decisions are going to tragically cut the future of Dakota Weirs short. The defense will try and spin these stories, telling you that the fertilizer Miss Weirs used was mostly safe, or safe enough. They will try and tell you that the studies showing the dangers of Drufo were outliers, or that they were poorly done. They will try and point the finger of blame at Dakota, at the environment, at anyone else. But in the end, after you have seen and heard the testimony here today, you will reach the obvious conclusion. Lush Fertilizer is responsible for creating a toxic chemical, and that toxic chemical is responsible for Dakota Weirs' illness. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Alex Kugler, and today, along with my co-counsel, Elizabeth Kugler and Kayla Anderson, we will present to you the evidence that shows Drufo causes cancer. Yet in order to cut costs, the company cut corners, didn't heed the warning signs, didn't bake their product to make it safe, and failed in their duty to protect consumers. As a result, Miss Weirs' future has been destroyed. Nothing can change those facts, but your verdict can bring justice to the parties that deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. We have Ms. Sachs from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Now, Your Honor and members of the jury, I am Shannon Sachs, and I am representing Lush Fertilizers here today. And this case is an unfortunate case of a girl trying to explain the unexplainable through a fertilizer company. And before I begin, I would like to say for myself and my client that we acknowledge that this is an extremely unfortunate case, and we truly sympathize with Dakota's condition. No matter the outcome of this case, Dakota is, without a doubt, still suffering from cancer, and for that, she has our most sincere condolences. We hope that she finds peace in the future. However, we do not want it to come at the expense of a company that is not to blame. And the company in question, Lush Fertilizer, cares about the environment, and most importantly, about its users. The evidence will show that Lush donates 10% of their earnings towards environmental causes. In fact, the whole reason that they developed and used Jufo is because of all the scientific evidence supporting its environmental benefits. Now, considering this amount of care that Lush puts into their products for the well-being of the environment, I ask, why would one assume that they do not also put in the same amount of care, if not more, in when it comes to the well-being of their customers? Furthermore, this situation was escalated by the show that the media put on. Everyone had to find out about Jufo's role in Lush Fertilizer products in a biased news story that focused solely on what new information people uncovered rather than the measures that Lush previously went through to keep their users safe. The media didn't mention the fact that Jufo is clearly listed as an ingredient on Lush products. They didn't list all the safety precautions that Lush detailed for their users, and they didn't state that there are no viable and published works that conclude that there is a definite link between Jufo and cancer in humans. Instead, they incited fear and rage in Dakota and the rest of the public, so they had no logical choice but to point fingers at Lush Fertilizer. Lush Fertilizer is a manufacturer. They research extensively, make the products, and sell them. After that, all safety precautions have to be understood by the buyer, which in this case is Haven Landscaping. It is up to Haven Landscaping to sufficiently educate their employees on the different types of chemicals that they are dealing with and enforce the use of protective gear, especially when such guidelines for protective gear are clearly labeled on the package and their employees were as young as 14 years old. It is no secret that one may be exposed to harmful chemicals when using fertilizer. That is true for any company. However, this means that one should take the necessary safety precautions, which Dakota did not. The hard reality of this case is that the cause of Dakota's cancer is undetermined and that correlation does not guarantee causation. There are hundreds of ways that someone may develop cancer, and as of now, no one can definitively say what caused it in Dakota. Nothing that you will hear about today says that Lush Fertilizer directly caused her cancer. And now, to really understand Lush Fertilizer's role in this case, we will call upon three witnesses. Blake Donacourt, the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer, will give you a look at the inner workings and logic and research behind including Jufo in their products. You will then hear from Skylar Weirs, who will provide a detailed description of Jufo in today's agritech and how, in actuality, Jufo is a safe product for the environment. Lastly, we will call upon Dr. Devin Williams, who leads the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer and is the chair of the company's ethics committee. Here we will learn about what Jufo does on a chemical level and how it cannot be proven to be the cause of Dakota's cancer. Lush Fertilizer and myself are both sorry for Dakota's case. However, the specific cause of her illness is unknown and undetermined. Your Honor and members of the jury, at the end of this case, you will see that in this truly unfortunate event, that Lush Fertilizers is not at fault and the plaintiff will not be able to meet their burden. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Take a minute to score. And I'm going to just step away for a second. Unfortunately, my dog is barking. I got to let him in. So one second, I'll be right back. Are your panelists ready, or Kelsey looks like you're still working? Okay, take your time. Ready? Okay, all right. Ms. Dunn, your first witness. Or do I have that wrong?
Yes, Your Honor. We're
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call Ms. Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Okay, I'm sorry. I read my glasses wrong. I apologize.
No worries, Your Honor.
You may go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Can you please begin by telling us your name and spelling it for the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Dakota Weirs, Eakotaweirs.
And why are you here today?
I'm here because Lush Fertilizer produces a chemical called Drufo, and I believe that chemical caused my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I want to begin by talking about your background. Could you tell us a bit about some important parts of your life prior to your illness?
I was just like any other teenage kid. I loved succeeding academically as a member of the National Honor Society. I volunteered at a local homeless shelter and worked at a local landscaping company on the side. And I also played the piano, which I cherished since I was a child, working towards my dream of attending Juilliard as a pianist.
What inspired you to work towards that goal?
I have loved to play the piano ever since my grandparents' gorgeous baby grand piano caught my attention. I would sit with my grandfather for hours as he taught me melodies that tightened my connection with him, until his death when I was only 7.
How did his death affect you?
After his death, I began keeping his memory alive by starting on my path towards professional piano. But now that dream is ruined.
And why is that?
I was recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I want to talk now about that diagnosis. How has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma impacted your life?
I've suffered most from my inability to play the piano. It has absolutely devastated me that I no longer have the strength to sit and play even the shortest concerto due to pain from fatigue, chest pain, enlarged lymph nodes, and bruises from sitting on the piano bench. My dreams of a Juilliard scholarship are gone, but the worst part is that I feel like I've lost my grandfather a second time. I'll never get that back.
How did this impact your emotional state?
Unfortunately, I became depressed after my diagnosis. I feel uncertain, and I don't know if I'll recover.
I'm sorry, Miss Weirs. I know this must be hard for you. Let's move on to your time working with a landscaping business and your experience with this chemical you mentioned called Drufo. How did you come to work for the landscaping company you mentioned earlier?
I started working at Haven Landscaping as a landscaping technician when I was 14 years old. I enjoyed being outdoors and liked to work with my hands, so it seemed like the perfect way to fund my schooling.
And what kinds of protective measures did you take against any chemicals that could have been in the fertilizer you used while you worked there?
Well, my old boss always told me to cover my face when working with chemicals, but sometimes it was too hot and I couldn't breathe. We were also technically supposed to wear long sleeves, pants, and gloves, but it was summer, and pretty much everyone who worked there just wore shorts and t-shirts. If I'd known the fertilizer we were using could cause cancer, I would have done things differently.
And how did you discover that your cancer could have a connection to your exposure to that fertilizer?
I was watching the news one day when I heard about the possibility that a chemical called Drufo, which was in a fertilizer I used all the time.
I'm sorry. Was there an objection? I apologize. I was looking at my screen.
Yes, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Rather, it is being offered for the effect on the listener. In this case, that it prompted Ms. Weirs to look further into the possibility of Drufo as a potential cause for her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Ms. Dunn?
Your Honor, the witness was testifying on behalf of what that news article was stating, and therefore it would be hearsay.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I thought it's not hearsay. It is for what she apparently did next, and therefore it's not for the truth. The jury's instructed to not regard this as a truthful issue. That this issue is true or not, you'll have to decide that later, but just what she did next.
Yes, Your Honor. How did you discover that your cancer could have a connection to your exposure to that fertilizer?
Well, like I said, when I was watching the news one day, I heard about the possibility that a chemical called Drupo could cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I knew I'd use Lush fertilizer, which contained Drupo, so I contacted my old boss, who confirmed this and got me a copy of the package.
And what labels, if any, were present on the fertilizer regarding safety concerns?
My old boss said there were no warning labels about the dangers of continuously using Lush fertilizer. I thought this was strange because many of the other products we used often had some sort of warning label on the packaging.
At this time, I'd like to direct your attention constructively to Exhibit 1, which my co-counsel should be sharing shortly. Ms. Weirs, do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is the label on the brand of Lush fertilizer I was exposed to while working at Haven Landscape.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor.
Permission granted.
Now, Ms. Weirs, what did the label mention regarding non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, if anything?
The label does not mention non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or any similar diseases. It has the ingredients, but no specific warnings.
And what else did you discover about the fertilizer you used, if anything?
Actually, I was able to find a French version of the exact label that was on the fertilizer. My dad helped me translate it and discovered it was different than the US version.
This time, I'd like to direct your attention to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 2. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is the French version of the label on Lush fertilizer.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 will be admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor.
Permission granted.
What did you notice about this list of ingredients?
It doesn't contain Drupo. It has exactly the same ingredients listed on the English version, just without Drupo.
And why is that significant?
It shows that Drupo was banned in France. I just don't understand how Lush could continue to use Drupo in the US when it had been banned in other countries for years.
And Ms. Weirs, what has led you to believe that your cancer was directly caused by using fertilizer containing Drupo?
Well, I happen to have a twin, Skylar Weirs, who participated in all of the same activities as me, except for my landscaping job. If I were exposed outside of my job, Skylar would have the disease as well. And as I said, I use Drupo all the time.
Let's talk a little more about Skylar. What was your relationship like with her before this case?
Well, Skylar and I have never had the stereotypically close twin relationship. Things between us started to get worse when my medical bills started piling up. Skylar accused me of draining my father's estate, even though my father had been paying many of Skylar's extensive gambling debts for years before I got sick.
And lastly, what outlook do you have on your future now that you have received this dire diagnosis?
Unless I suddenly get better, my dreams of a Juilliard scholarship are gone, and I'm unable to play the piano I once loved. Although the doctors have not given up hope, we have no idea if my condition could worsen or what kind of additional care I may need in the future. I have no idea if I'll survive or lose my life to this disease.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Give 1 second, Ms. Dunn. I want to make sure the timers are ready, and then we'll get you started.
I'm ready.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Dunn, I think we can go ahead. You mean Ross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Now, on your direct examination, you mentioned you worked as a landscaper, yes?
That is correct.
And you worked for multiple years, correct?
That is also correct.
And is it safe to assume you worked quite a lot?
Yes.
You helped out at soccer fields?
You know, I don't specifically remember the places that I worked.
But you worked quite a bit and extensively, correct?
Yes.
And you were too young to operate machinery, correct?
Yes, I was only 14.
So that meant that you consistently had the role of spreading seed and fertilizer, yes?
Yes, that was my primary job.
So after many years working, wouldn't you agree that you had a lot of exposure to fertilizers and chemicals?
Yes, especially lush fertilizer.
Could you please refer to what has been marked as Exhibit 1?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Could you please refer to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1?
Do you have a copy of it that I could see constructively?
Yes, I'm going to ask my timekeeper to screen share Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
All right, can you see Exhibit 1 now?
I can, thank you.
And this is a lush label a label of lush fertilizer, correct?
It is.
And this is the fertilizer that you used while landscaping?
Yes.
Now, do you mind reading along in your head while I read the user safety recommendations marked on the label?
Yes, I can.
As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and maintaining. Have you read this warning label before, Ms. Weirs?
I have.
Now, when working with this fertilizer, did you wear long clothing?
It was recommended.
I need you to answer the question, Ms. Weirs. Did you wear long clothing?
I didn't wear long clothing. I didn't wear bubble wrap. I didn't wear a hazmat suit. It was recommended. I had no idea this product was going to cause cancer.
Did you wear a mask?
I didn't.
Did you exclusively work with these products outdoors like you were advised?
I did not. My company had me working both indoors and outdoors.
Now, Ms. Weirs, you also testified in your direct that, and to quote you, many of the other products we used also had warning labels, correct?
That is correct.
And you also just testified that you never wore protective material while exposed to these other products.
It was recommended.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your answer?
It was recommended.
Could you please answer my question? You never wore protective material?
I did not.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Your Honor, permission to conduct a brief redirect?
Got locked out here for a second.
Oh, there you are. I believe we can hear you now, Your Honor.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get everybody ready. My screen froze for a minute there, so I'll make sure we have everybody. So, okay, Ms. Kugler, do you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ms. Weirs, you said in prior testimony that your boss told you to wear all of this clothing. How come you didn't?
Well, it was really more of a recommendation, and I never saw it enforced while I worked there. I was just following the examples of the more experienced employees.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn, any cross based on that question?
Yes, Your Honor. In regards to this protective material, you were advised to protect yourself, correct?
It was recommended. It was never enforced. I had no idea this product was going to give me cancer.
But you did not wear any protective material of any kind?
It never said I was going to get cancer, so no, I did not.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. The witness is excused. We'll take a few minutes, let the scored panelists score. Okay, Ms. Valena, I believe, next witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call to the stand Miss Carson Durst.
Okay. You show up as Alex Kluger, but I assume you're Elizabeth Valena, is that correct?
I'm Alex Kugler. I'm the plaintiff. I believe that the other person you referred to is on the defense.
All right, hang on. I'm looking at what it says prosecution, so let me go back. All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Kluger, you are, I recognize the last name and I didn't recognize the first name had changed, so I apologize. So you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry for the confusion. All right. Good afternoon, Miss Durst. Could you please state your name and spell it for the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Carson Durst, CarsonDurst.
And what is your connection with this case today?
I was a product development engineer at Lush Fertilizer, and among other things, I worked on testing Drufo.
First, I'd like to talk about how you initially came to work with Lush Fertilizer. How did you get a job at Lush?
Well, I was best friends with Charles Doncourt, the oldest son of Blake Doncourt, who is the CEO of Lush. Charles and I were really close when we were kids. I did everything with the Doncourts. When I graduated from college, Charles suggested that I apply to his dad's company, Lush Fertilizer. I applied and joined the company as an intern in 2003.
Next, I'd like to talk about your employment with Lush and the initial research you conducted on Drufo. How did your work with Drufo begin?
Well, after only 3 months with the company, I was promoted to a full-time position because of the quality of my work. And I got the opportunity to work on one of Lush's most promising products, Drufo. As part of the company's efforts to test the safety of Drufo, my job was to research one of the compounds.
What did you find in your research?
I found a study that had been done in England showing that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats.
This study has been previously marked as Exhibit 3. My co-counsel should be sharing that shortly. Can you see that all right, Ms. Durst?
Yes.
Do you recognize this?
I do.
What is it?
This is a copy of the study I found showing Drufo can cause cancer in rats.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of it?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Duran, I didn't hear you.
No objection, Your Honor. Sorry.
Thank you. Exhibit 3 will be admitted. That's okay. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, permission to constructively publish to the jury.
Granted.
What jumped out to you about this study?
Well, in this study, researchers administered this compound C3NO9P in rats in varying amounts in their normal diet. The rats that were exposed to more of this compound got cancer and died quicker than the rats that weren't. This made me concerned that Drufo could cause cancer in humans too.
What part of the study made you think that?
Well, the study reads that this study further underlines the importance of conducting an epidemiologic study in which exposure to Drufo is monitored in humans.
Next, I'd like to talk about Lush Fertilizer's second study that you were a part of. What happened after you submitted this research?
After I documented this study in my lab notebook and sent it to upper management, Lush announced that they'd be doing another in-house study on whether Drufo could potentially cause cancer in humans. Jerry Langley, who's the product manager for Drufo, sent out an email with instructions for this study.
This email has been previously marked as Exhibit 4. Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to constructively share this to the witness. Your Honor.
Can I get a pause on the time? Yes, thank you. It appears our presiding judge is frozen.
Sorry, you guys, bear with us while we wait for the judge to sign back on here. And if, Chad, I got your message. If you want to go ahead and cut your video, that might help with the bandwidth.
That sounds excellent. Thank you for the update.
Yep. Hi there, Judge.
Hi, sorry about
Welcome
that.
back
I
in.
don't know what the heck happened. I got really reliable email or internet.
That's okay.
Just lost it. Can I have a number so if I have to get, I can call somebody?
Yes, I will put my number in the chat.
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm gonna find. I'm changing computers as well, so I can try to make sure I don't have this problem again.
So if we were going to be halfway.
And we had the scoring panelists turn off their cameras to try and help with the bandwidth feed.
Yeah, I don't know if it's you guys or it was me. You know, I have real reliable bandwidth. I deal with meetings all the time. And I'm not quite
No
sure.
problem. It happens.
I'm trying to go with different computers. I got to readjust my camera.
Sure.
All right. So if I can have Ms. Durst, yeah, okay. So I apologize, everyone. We're going to keep the scoring panelist off. I have real reliable internet, and don't know what happened, but my internet just died. So I apologize to everyone. And did you guys see me drop off? You know where you were?
Yes, Honor. Yes, Your
Good. And
Honor.
I hope we got the timers to shut off. I tried to tell everybody I was losing it so that you would know. So, all right.
No worries, Your Honor.
I think everybody's ready. So let's go ahead and get started again. I apologize for the problem. So,
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, permission for me to constructively share Exhibit 4 with the witness?
sure. I think it's where we were, as I recall, when I lost it. So thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, Ms. Durst, can you see that?
Yes.
And we could start the clock again. Thank you so much.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
What is it?
This is the email that Jerry Langley sent out with instructions for the in-house study.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that email?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 will be admitted.
Permission to constructively publish it to the jury.
You granted?
Ms. Durst, what was the message sent out in this email?
Well, Jerry made it clear in this email that the first study we did on Drufo showed that Drufo could cause cancer, and it was going to be redone to get different results.
And how did you come to this conclusion?
Well, Jerry wrote that concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities in samples. We are reinitiating this study in the coming weeks with fresh product samples. Clearly, Jerry was displeased with the results that showed Drufo could cause cancer and was going to redo the study.
Was there anything else notable about this email?
Well, I found it concerning that engineers were invited to meet with marketing and economic management.
And why did this stand out to you?
Well, it might be problematic if
Objection,
engineers...
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Speculation. The attorney is asking the witness to speculate on the motive of this email.
On the motives of the email is what you said?
Yeah. Trying to spec.
Got it. Okay. Ms. Kluger.
Your Honor, this is not speculation. This is simply the witness's rationally based perception, as anyone can see that when you have scientists meeting with the marketing team, that could be potentially problematic.
Response, Mr. Duran?
Yes. The attorney is trying to ask the witness to speculate on why they think something in this email that is not necessarily explicitly designed in this email. So the attorney is asking the witness to speculate on the concept of why this object of the email is being stated.
Ms. Klugler, I apologize. Please, could you tell me what your question was again?
Yes, Your Honor. My question was why did this stand out to you? And I was referencing Ms. Durst's previous statement about lab techs and engineers meeting with market and economic management.
Seems to me it's an appropriate opinion on why it stands out. It doesn't go to the truth or what's in the document itself. It's just her opinion. So in that regard, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, why did this stand out to you?
Well, I was concerned that if engineers and lab techs were meeting with the marketing segment, they might be receiving pressure to doctor the study results and make Drufo more profitable.
Now, I'd like to talk about what happened after the study was completed. What did Lush do after this research was finished?
After we completed our research, Lush had a meeting in which Alex Monroe, an upper echelon manager, attended. During that meeting, Alex said that we should keep it in the walls until we know what we're doing.
What did Alex Monroe want to keep inside the walls when she made that statement?
Well, Alex was responding to a statement by one of the scientists who said that not only could Drufo potentially cause cancer, but it had been linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What happened after the meeting?
After the meeting was done, Lush released a study report which mentioned that more research would be needed to learn the long-term health effects of Drufo, but it didn't mention anything about cancer or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Through the data I saw while I worked at Lush, all of the data that showed Drufo was cancerous was dismissed as outlying data. After the study was conducted, Lush knew or should have known that Drufo caused cancer, but they continued to sell it anyways.
I would now like to talk about the end of your career at Lush Fertilizer. What happened to your career at Lush after the study?
Well, after the study was released, my relationship with senior management quickly declined. I was subject to a lot of criticism and negativity, all because I was trying to keep our product safe.
What did you do about this problem?
Well, I tried to talk to Miss Doncourt about it. The first time she yelled at me saying I was unqualified for my job. I was really hurt by this. And the second time she also yelled at me saying and was increasingly erratic and in her behavior. At that point, I really started to fear for my status at the company.
What happened after this conversation?
After I talked to Miss Doncourt, I was fired by Lush Fertilizer and I got hired at Terra's Greenery.
What happened after you started working for Terra's Greenery?
Well, I learned that my new job apparently violated a non-compete agreement that I signed with Lush over 3 years ago. I hadn't remembered signing the agreement, and I didn't intentionally mean to violate it. After a legal battle with Lush, we sorted it out, and I agreed to start my job at Terrace Greenery after waiting 6 months.
Through the research you conducted during your time at Lush Fertilizer, how did you learn about the health effects of Drufo?
During my time at Lush Fertilizer, I saw that Drufo is not safe for humans. The study conducted while I worked at Lush showed this toxic quality to Drufo, but Lush continued to sell this product to their customers.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Hey, Mrs. Kugler. Mr. Duran.
Good afternoon, Miss. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Miss Durst. You worked at Terrace Greenery, did you not?
Yes, I currently work there.
And you are the lead research and project manager?
Yes.
And before Terrace Greenery, you worked at Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yeah, that was my first job.
Okay. Now let's talk about your personal relationship with the Doncourts. Were you close to Charles Doncourt?
I was. We were best friends growing up.
Okay. And Charles' dad, Blake Doncourt, is CEO of Lush, correct?
Yes.
And ultimately was your boss, right?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So would you say that Mr. Doncourt had a influence in your hiring?
I mean, I wouldn't say so. I submitted an honest application, and Charles gave me the idea of a place to apply, thinking maybe his dad could help me. But from what I saw, my application was as honest as anyone else's.
Did you state in your testimony that he, quote, pulled some strings for you?
I mean, that's what Charles told me, but I have no proof that that actually happened.
Now, you were fired at Lush, correct?
Yes, unfortunately, after I had some negative claims over Drufo and disputes with the senior management.
Okay. And before you were fired, did you sign a non-compete agreement?
I did. I signed that when I joined the company.
Your Honor, I would like to refer the witness to Exhibit 5. I think my timekeeper will present that.
Certainly.
Seems to be, thank you. Ms. Durst, do you recognize this?
I do. This is the non-compete that I signed with Lush.
How do you know this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question? I didn't quite catch that.
How do you know that this is the non-compete agreement that you signed with Lush?
I recognize it as what we signed. I was reminded about it when we had the dispute. I didn't remember it when I joined Terrace Greenery.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the copy that you signed at the start of Lush?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is that your signature at the bottom? My timekeeper will scroll down.
Yes, that is.
Okay. Carson, can you please read number 1 for me under the non-compete agreement?
Objection, facts not in evidence.
In response?
Oh, my apologies. I would like to admit this piece of evidence into the record.
Is there an objection?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff objects to hearsay.
I'm sorry, you object what?
To hearsay, Your Honor.
Okay, response.
Could the opposing counsel explain their objection of hearsay? I'm a little bit confused.
Well, she indicates that the document is hearsay. Do you believe it's
sorry.
hearsay?
Yes. Sorry, I could not hear. Your Honor, this is a piece of evidence that has been submitted into the court. The chain of custody cannot be stipulated, and this piece of evidence has been stated to be signed by Mr. Durst and recognized under the court.
Your Honor, may I?
You may, go ahead.
Your Honor, this is an out-of-court statement being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, and The opposing counsel has not provided any reason why this should be admitted that would be either an exception or to make it not fall under that category.
Last word, Mr. Duran.
Yes, Your Honor. For this to be understood why we must submit it into evidence, I must first actually admit it into evidence to question.
Your Honor, yes, my apologies. Our attorney just got locked out of the computer. If we could
Okay.
have a brief pause of time.
Thank you. Please pause the time.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Could you repeat that?
I said we'll pause the time.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Apologies, Your Honor.
That's all right. We have everybody back. All right, I think we're addressing an objection on the exhibit. So it was hearsay. And Mr. Duran, I think it was over to you.
Yes. Yes, Your Honor. I was stating prior that the opposing counsel would like me to present why this piece of evidence should be admitted, but I cannot do that until it is actually admitted. The reasoning.
I don't find this document to be hearsay. It appears to be an agreement entered into by and between Ms. Durst and the company. And it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. It's the agreement that they entered into. And I think it's up to the jury to decide what weight to give it. So I'm going to overrule the objection and admit Exhibit 5.
Okay. Ms. Durst, can you please read to me number 1 under the non-compete agreement?
Yes. Non-compete covenant. During employment and for a period of 2 years after the separation of employment for any reason, the employee will not directly or indirectly engage in any competitive business and shall not become directly or indirectly engaged in any business that would benefit from disclosure of Lush's trade secrets.
Thank you. So you violated this agreement by taking a position with Terrace Greenery, a direct competitor of Lush, correct?
Yes, I did. Once again, as you noticed, I had a little trouble reading it. It's been a long time since I looked at this, over 3 years. And when I applied for my job at Terrace Greenery, I had totally forgotten about this agreement.
Okay, but you did sign that at the beginning of your employment, did you not?
Yes, once again, I had forgotten about it when I applied, though.
Okay. Now let's talk about your job performance at Lush. This was your first job out of college, correct?
Yes.
And were you quickly promoted?
After 3 months, I moved from an intern to a full-time position.
And soon after your promotion, your performance reviews began to fall, didn't they?
My performance reviews started to fall after Lush completed their study and my negative claims of Redrufa were voiced.
Okay, but that was soon after your promotion, correct?
It depends on how you think of soon, but it was like a couple months.
Okay. And the quality of your work was being criticized in these performance reviews, were they not?
That was because of my negative claims of Redrufa, yes.
Now let's talk about your research with Drufo while you were employed at Lush. In your research, you found one study about Drufo that stated it was carcinogenic in rats, correct?
Yes, that's Exhibit 3.
Can we, Your Honor, at this time, I would like to revert to what has been marked as Exhibit 3. Could my timekeeper? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Where does this study say that this study was based on Drufo?
Well, so you have to understand if your timekeeper would scroll up, this study was on a compound C3NO9P, and that compound is what is in Drufo. So while it doesn't say it was on Drufo, it was on an element of Drufo.
Specific compound of Drufo.
Well, this compound is used in more things than just Drufo, so it wasn't specifically researching about the compound. It didn't specifically matter that it was with Drufo or without.
Okay, but this is a singular part of Drufo. This is not Drufo as a whole, is it?
No, but it's a very important part, especially if it causes cancer.
Okay. That study was not taken any further to determine whether or not Drufo could be linked to humans, was it?
Not that I'm aware of, but it probably could have been.
Have you ever read any study that shows any connections with Drufo and any type of cancer in human beings?
Well, I believe that the study Lush did shows that Drufo is connected to cancer in humans.
Okay, but this study was on rats, was it not?
Yes.
So have you ever read any studies that have connected Drufo with any types of cancer in humans?
Once again, I believe the study Lush did shows that Drufo is connected to cancer in humans.
Okay. Lush itself conducted 2 in-house studies, did they not?
Yes.
All right. And in these studies, they didn't find any concerns, did they?
They didn't, but from what I saw, I was concerned.
Okay. And did you have all of the data in these studies as an intern?
I did not, but I was not an intern during the second study, but I had access to a lot of the data, and from what I saw, Drufo causes cancer.
Okay, that's all, Your Honor.
Your Honor, at this time, we call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stands. I am so sorry, Your Honor, you are muted.
I apologize. I forgot I had noise in the background. Is there any redirect of Mrs. Durst? Mr. Durst? Ms. Durst, sorry. I remember I lost my agendas and my rosters.
No redirect.
That was a no. Okay, then we are ready for the next witness. Let's just hold on a second. I need to make sure if in the chat the scorers could let me know they're ready, and then we'll start with the next witness. Chad, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next witness.
Good afternoon. Can you please begin by telling us your name and stating it for the court?
Sure. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, spelled CaseyRogers.
I want to start with your background information. Can you tell us about your work and what you do for a living?
Sure. I am currently employed as a professor in the Horticulture and Entomology Department at the University of California at Berkeley.
And what education do you have?
Well, I got my PhD in agriculture and entomology from the University of California at Berkeley, and I got my Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University.
Now, what sorts of things do you research?
I research pesticide chemistry and toxicology, metabolism and mode of interest of organic toxins, as well as insect biochemistry.
And what are you doing currently?
Well, currently I have been studying the potential harmful effects that long-term exposure to certain chemicals have on the human body.
And what, if anything, have you published on these topics?
Well, I have published numerous scholarly articles on the negative health effects that certain exposure to chemicals have on the human body, including 2 articles that I have published on the negative health effects of the chemical Drufo.
And what happens with that research?
Well, my research has been used all over the place, in litigation, in front of administrative advisory boards. I also make recommendations to employers on how best to protect their employees from dangerous chemicals.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, I move to admit Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in carcinogenic agricultural products and chemicals and their effects on humans based on her knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education.
Is there any objection to the offered field?
No objections, Your Honor.
Should be so qualified and allowed to express opinions in those fields.
I want to move on to your research on Drufo. What is Drufo?
Drufo is a patented ingredient that Lush uses in all of its fertilizers and products as a bonding agent. It is used to keep the fertilizer on the plant and to keep the plants fresh.
And why was Drufo a particular interest to you?
Sure. Well, Drufo first got my attention when it came to the market in the very beginning. And it did that because I believe that it had been rushed to the market without sufficient tests on its safety.
So what did you do in response?
Well, in response, I conducted my own scientific study to see if it was in fact safe for humans.
What did you find?
Well, my study found numerous negative health side effects as a result of being exposed to Drufo for a prolonged period of time.
Can you elaborate on the risks you determined existed with Drufo?
Sure. The people in my study who were exposed to Drufo for prolonged periods of time were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those without any exposure. And they were 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those with only partial exposure.
Now, I'd like to discuss non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. One of the diseases your research concludes is caused by Drufo. Can you explain what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is?
Sure. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a specific type of cancer that affects the white blood cells in the body called lymphocytes.
Where does lymphoma start?
Lymphoma can start in any area of the body containing lymph tissue, and that includes bone marrow, stomach, really anywhere that has, lymphocytes.
And where does lymphoma spread?
Well, once lymphoma is in the body, it can then spread throughout the entire rest of the body.
And what is the survival rate?
The 5-year survival rate for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is only 72%.
And how is it caused?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is caused by particles on the itty-bitty scale of bacteria and viruses that enter the body. These dangerous, harmful chemicals can enter 2 main ways, either being absorbed through the skin or inhaled through the lungs.
Now, who else besides Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of their exposure to Drufo?
Well, in my study, I looked at how people who had been exposed to Drufo and, what their life and whether they had any negative health side effects. And as I have previously stated, those in my case who had prolonged exposure to Drufo were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those without exposure. Specifically, they were more likely to contract endocrine and exocrine-based varieties of cancer, the latter of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And in your expert opinion, having reviewed all the data in your study, what did you conclude about the health impacts of Drufo?
Well, in my expert opinion, I concluded that Drufo is in fact carcinogenic, and it does cause negative health side effects in people who are exposed to it.
And what is your expert opinion on the cause of Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, in my expert opinion, reviewing her medical records and using the case study and the study that I had, I believe that Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was caused or correlated to, and there's a high degree of medical probability that Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was caused by exposure to the chemical Drufo.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Saxon, excuse me. Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Our timekeeper is ready. Right,
Yep.
fantastic.
Good question.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. Thank you for being here today. Now, let's start with the study you conducted. So you said you did a study on the effects of Drufo in those who work on farms and those who use products of Drufo every day, and you compared those to those who have never come into contact with Drufo at all, right?
Yes. So in my study, I had three main groups. Those who had prolonged exposure to Drufo. So those who have been exposed to Drufo for a long period of time, multiple years. Those who have been exposed to Drufo only partially. They didn't work with Drufo every day, but they were still exposed, and they were still exposed a fair bit. And then I used normal people. I used a control group.
Thank you. That answered my question. In your study, though, you only looked at fertilizers with Drufo and not any other type of chemical without it, didn't you?
Yes. So my study was looking at the effects of the chemical Drufo and fertilizers, lush fertilizers that use the chemical Drufo. So I looked at what the causes and effects were of people using Drufo, which was in this case, a lot of them contracted cancer.
Okay, but you neglected to include this very important group of people in your study to compare to, didn't you?
If you mean the fact that I had a control, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking here.
Allow me to clarify. You neglected to include a group of people who use fertilizers that did not include Drufo in your study to compare to, correct?
Yes. So my study was more of a case study. I looked at people who use Drufo on a regular basis. I believe, and I believed, and it would be inhumane. It would be inhumane for me to expose humans, to expose innocent people to a chemical like Drufo that could give them cancer, that could give them non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that could destroy their lives. So
Thank you. They answered my question. Now, continuing on with your study, it isn't published, is it?
I believe my study is published, but I'm not 100% certain off the top of my head.
But your study has never been replicated either, has it?
I don't believe that's in my witness statement, but I would be happy to answer.
Okay, as far as you believe, is your study replicated?
I believe my study is replicated and it has been peer reviewed. I am a tenured professor at the University of California at Berkeley, and I put out work that I believe in and that I know is correct, and that is the case with this study.
However, all the information you are telling us today about the effects of Drufo on humans only come from the one study you conducted, right?
Yes, all the things come from this study.
Thank you. They answered my question. You also said you have a degree in agriculture and entomology, which relates to cultivating a soil and studying insects, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, I do. I have a degree in agriculture and entomology from the University of California at Berkeley.
Thank you. And these degrees, they are not focused on cancer, are they?
I have countless hours. I have reviewed numerous medical records of people with cancer about what their things were. However, I do not have a degree in cancer, as I believe that is what you're getting at, but I have lots of experience, lots of hours in the field, and I have done this study. I know so much about cancer and medical, but I do not have a certain degree. My degrees are in agriculture and entomology, and agriculture and chemistry.
All right. And in your research, you found that people were exposed to JUFO by either breathing it or physically coming into contact with it, correct?
Yes, I did. I feel like that is a general way to get cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And you recommended long sleeves and pants as well as a medical grade mask when using the product, correct?
Yes, so I am doing a backup study, another kind of study, and I was doing it. And that is how wearing PPE, personal protective equipment, affects the chances of getting cancers from carcinogenic products like Drufil. However, my study was a little bit inconclusive. I still, of course, recommend that people wear long sleeves, pants, and a mask. However, sadly, that is not the case in most work environments today. I feel like some bosses are a little careless and some workers are, they can't necessarily do that all the time. But that is why I think that, chemicals, there needs to be accurate information out there. If a chemical like Drufo is carcinogenic, I believe people have the right to know. I want to help people.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Mhm.
And lastly, if one did wear long clothing and a medical grade mask, it would lower one's risk of exposure, wouldn't it?
Yes, presumably. However, like I said, in my backup study, I do not have definitive evidence, but yes, most likely that is the case.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs. I think I've mispronounced your last name. I apologize. Is there any redirect?
Sorry, a brief redirect, Your Honor.
You may go proceed.
There we go. Dr. Rogers, how do you respond to the defense's argument that you didn't use a control group?
Well, although I did not use a control group of other people that used other fertilizers, I chose not to do a closed lab experiment, which, admittedly, that would have been the best way to do it, but it would have been inhumane. It would have been against my moral code to expose innocent people to this, which I have found, carcinogenic chemical that, could destroy their lives, destroy their livelihoods, hurt their family, and cause so many to grieve.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions based on that, Ms. Sachs?
No more questions, Your Honor.
No more? Okay. Witness is excused. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses? Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses?
My apologies, Your Honor. The plaintiff has no further witnesses at this time.
The plaintiff rest. Okay, let's give the scoring pass the time to score, and then we'll begin the defense case. The scoring pass can somehow signify that you're ready to go. Put your screen on. Give me a thing in the chat. Okay, we're ready. Defense, want to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense now calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Tyler? Skylar, sorry.
Good afternoon, Ms. Skylar, or Ms. Weirs. If you could please state your name, spelling your last name for the court.
Skylar Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
Now, Ms. Weirs, how do you know the plaintiff in today's trial?
She is my fraternal twin.
And how do you feel about your twin's diagnosis?
It's horrible. It's terrible to do to my family and to my sister.
Now, I want to talk about you for a moment. What do you do, Ms. Weirs?
I'm a journalist.
And what is your primary focus as a journalist?
Agritech.
And how long have you been working with this agritech?
I've been doing it for hundreds of hours.
And can you tell me why you got into this area of work?
Well, I was quite a fan of agrotech, so one day I went to my boss and I asked him if I could do it, and he okayed it.
Could you tell me more about some of the things you've written on agritech specifically?
I have written about GMOs and how they can help and create lots of money. I've also written about how nitrogens can help the earth.
And who do you write for, Ms. Weirs?
I write for a Rationalist magazine.
Can you tell me more about what Rationalist magazine is?
Rationalist magazine is a magazine company that works against science skepticism.
Can you tell me more about the research that you conducted for Rationalist magazine?
Well, one of the important things was trying to get the word about what it was. So I went to the scientists who did a lot of research on this, and I spoke with them, and I made sure that they would get a lot of writing into my journalism.
Then, do you believe that your experience within the field of agritech is valuable to the court today?
I do.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender this witness as an expert in the field of agritech.
Is there any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, permission to voir dire.
You have that permission. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs.
Good afternoon.
Let's start with your education. You've never attended college?
No, I have not.
And you have no graduate degree of any kind?
I have not.
And you now work a part-time position at Applebee's in order to make a living?
Yes, I do, but I spend countless hours. I mean, I only work part-time, so the rest of the time I spend doing research, even into the late at night.
I'd actually like to discuss that now, Ms. Weirs. You researched Drufo for less than a year immediately after you were hired?
Yes, but I've also done research before my extensive research started. So not just that.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, the plaintiff objects to the admission of this witness as an expert in modern agritech, as according to the court's pretrial ruling, 4 things need to be shown in this case to qualify Ms. Weirs as an expert. That she spent considerable time researching agritech companies, that she reviewed publications written by those companies, that she reviewed research studies referenced in those publications, and reviewed information maintained by the USDA and NASDA. While we, the plaintiff, acknowledge that the defense has laid some of that foundation, we don't believe that they have as such confirmed Ms. Weir's qualifications as to her time spent researching agritech companies and as to her information knowledge of the USDA and NASDA. And as such, we would request that they lay further foundation before Ms. Weirs can be qualified as an expert.
Ms. Dunn, respond.
Honor, according to Rule of Evidence 702, the witness is not required to hold a specific degree in order to qualify as a witness and only needs to qualify in one of the 5 categories: knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. And Ms. Weirs has clearly testified that she qualifies in the category of knowledge.
Your Honor, may I respond to that briefly?
Yes.
Your Honor, in this case, while Rule 702 does apply, the court's pretrial ruling requires 4 qualifications for Ms. Weirs in this trial. And as such, while the defense might have provided enough evidence for Rule 702, I don't believe that they've laid enough foundation for Ms. Weirs' admission under the pretrial motion.
So I did rule a pretrial on certain things that would be necessary. However, Rule 702 does control, and I think that sufficient basis has been established to qualify Ms. Weirs as an expert under 702. The quality or the depth of that experience certainly is something you can examine and cross, and it goes to weight, not admissibility as an expert. So I'm going to allow her to testify as an expert in the field of agritech.
Yes,
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, can you tell me what you found through your research about what Drufo is specifically?
Well, Drufo is a bonding agent and allows specific elementals like nitrogen to bond to the grass.
And what are some downsides of using products that don't contain Drufo?
Well, if it doesn't contain Drufo, it doesn't bond to the grass as well and can be washed away, leading to big areas of overflow of nitrogen called dead zones in our ocean. They can also cause blue baby syndrome.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this nitrogen?
Well, nitrogen is vital to our system, and without it, I mean, the grass wouldn't grow as green. So keeping it bonded to the grass helps, first of all, the grass and our nature, but also protects humans from terrible things. I mean, especially pregnant ladies.
And do you believe that Lush fertilizer is scientifically safer than other fertilizers in your expert opinion?
I do.
And in your expert opinion, would you trust Lush fertilizer over other chemicals?
Yes, I would.
That will be all, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Kugler,
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to conduct cross-examination.
you may proceed.
Hello again, Ms. Weirs.
Hello.
I'd like to discuss your views on modern agritech further. You support the corporation Monsanto.
I guess.
And this is a company that has, in your words, effectively monopolized several markets.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk about your career as a journalist. You now work for Rationalist Magazine, a publication that promotes scientific skepticism.
Yes.
But you admit your articles haven't been lucrative.
Sure.
And you say you've missed out on many potential job opportunities.
I have.
I want to discuss your research on Drufo more. You claim that Drufo is safe for use.
Yes, it is.
And synthetic nitrogen is one of the key ingredients in Drufo.
Yes.
Yet nitrogen has been linked to various kinds of cancer and other diseases.
Nitrogen is not carcinogenic.
But it has been linked to various kinds of cancer and other diseases.
Not nitrogen itself.
So it's your statement here today that nitrogen hasn't been linked to various kinds of cancer and other diseases.
Yes.
You gave a statement in this case?
Yes, I did.
And when you did so, you took an oath to tell the truth?
Yes, I did.
And that is the same oath that you have taken in court today?
I have.
I'd like to direct your attention to your previous witness statement, which my co-counsel should be sharing here shortly. And I'd like you to read lines 63 through 65 silently while I read aloud. Nitrogen is known to contribute to various types of cancer and methemoglobinemia, commonly known as blue baby syndrome, adverse reproductive outcomes, especially neural tube defects, diabetes, and thyroid conditions. Did I read that correctly? Ms. Weirs?
Do we lose the witness?
No, that was my fault. Yes, you did.
Did I read that correctly, Ms. Weirs?
You did.
Now, you classify Drufo as a pesticide.
Yes.
I'd now like to direct your attention to Exhibit 1, which has been previously admitted. And on this label, there is no method mention of any of the ingredients, including Drufo being a pesticide.
Yes, you don't need to mention that on a label.
And you agree that pesticides are, by definition, poisonous and hazardous to living organisms, including humans.
Some pesticides, but not all. Only specific pesticides, and Drufo is not one of those pesticides. I mean, when you eat strawberries, are you afraid of the pesticides hurting you?
Well, while that's certainly a fascinating course of discussion, I believe we got a little bit off track. So you would agree that some pesticides can be poisonous?
Yes, some, but this is not one of them.
You're not aware of any studies linking Drufo to cancer?
I am aware of those studies, but those studies were found inconclusive.
And there are no warnings regarding nitrogen, another key ingredient to this fertilizer, as a link to cancer or any other diseases on this label?
Yes, there's not, but when you put in a ingredient that has other ingredients in it, you do not need to put those on the label.
Thank you, Mrs. Weirs. A simple yes or no will suffice for the future. I want to talk about your possible financial motivation for being here today. You admit that you are a gambler, correct?
I was.
And you said in your statement that you blame major agriculture players for your economic instability.
Yes.
You currently have outstanding debt from your sports betting.
Objection, relevancy. The witness is here to testify on behalf of being an expert in agritech and nothing else.
Response?
Your Honor, this goes to show the witness's financial bias in this case, which is highly relevant to their testimony.
And how is it relevant?
It goes to show their financial bias, Your Honor, and any potential motivation or bias they may have.
Response, Ms. Dunn.
Yes, Your Honor. That's not relevant in today's case. Her character is not in question. She's here specifically as an expert in agritech and is testifying on behalf of whether or not agritech in Drufo is carcinogenic.
I think it goes to her credibility. So I'm going to allow the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you currently have outstanding debt from your sports betting.
I do. It's not outstanding, but it's a little bit of debt.
And your parents have cut you off financially due to your decision to forego college.
Yes, they were quite upset, but I understood.
Your parents were assisting you with your gambling debts prior to Dakota's illness.
Yes.
But now your father is paying Dakota's medical bills rather than your gambling debts.
Which is unfortunate. Yes, I feel terrible for my sister, but my gambling debts aren't a concern because of the family's money.
But your father is paying those bills, correct?
He was, but the medical bills are more important than mine.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn, is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, I just want to clarify in your expert opinion on agritech specifically, you found that Drufo was safe to use, correct?
Drufo is safe to use.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross based on that question?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, the witness is excused. Give the scoring panelist a second here. Okay, we're ready. Defense want to call another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Ms. Doncourt to the stand.
Doncourt?
Good afternoon, Ms. Doncourt. Can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the court?
Hi, my name is Blake Doncourt. That's Doncourt.
Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself, Ms. Doncourt?
Well, I'm the CEO of my own company, Lush Fertilizer, and I have been since 2003.
Can you tell me about your company, Lush Fertilizer?
Well, we produce fertilizers, but we're also very environmentally friendly. We donate 10% of our profits to charities that help reduce our global nitrogen footprint, and we also host our own education programs and charities that help clean the world's most polluted oceans.
What's inside Lush Fertilizer products, Ms. Doncourt?
A chemical compound called Drufo.
What can you tell me about Drufo?
Drufo is a pathogen bonding agent in our fertilizer that keeps it preserved, intact, and produces your luscious green grass.
And how many times did Lush test Drufo?
Twice.
And did anybody else test Drufo?
The EPA did, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, and no concerns were raised.
And what did you find with your test results?
We found that the risk of Drufo being dangerous is statistically insignificant.
Now let's talk about baking. Does Lush bake its products?
We do not.
And why is that?
Well, by federal standards, it's just overkill.
Okay. And did your test results warrant any need for baking your products?
No, it did not.
Okay. Now let's move on to Carson Durst. What was your relationship like?
Well, Carson was like a kid to me, and they were best friends with my son, Charles. And we would take them to our lake house in the summers, and I would even drive them to their soccer games.
And what was Carson Durst's role in your company?
Carson was an intern for our research and development team.
Okay. And can you tell me about Ms. Durst's layoff?
Well, we found that they were underperforming, and therefore we decided it was best to drop them from the company.
And what did they do after that?
They worked for our competing company, Terra's Greenery, and therefore they violated our non-compete agreement.
And what was?
Yes, was there objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Relevance?
Mr. Duran, how is it relevant?
Yes, Your Honor. This is to establish Carson Durst's character from the second party of Miss Doncourt, who was a lead supervisor. She is purely stating what happened with her company and giving her opinion on another witness in this case.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't see how Carson Durst is relevant to the question of whether or not Lush fertilizer causes cancer and whether or not Carson Durst signed a certain agreement.
Okay, the agreements and evidence. I'm going to allow the question. I think it's in evidence, and like the Trevor who put it in evidence, the Trevor which side the case came in on. But I think that it's in evidence, and asked the question, this witness about it, and its impact. It certainly goes to maybe credibility of Ms. Durst. So,
thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to restate the question?
I'd be grateful, yes.
What was the non-compete agreement?
The agreement stated that they cannot work for a competing company for the span of at least 2 years.
And did they keep their word with this agreement?
Not at all.
Would you say that Carson is a trustworthy person?
Not anymore.
Okay. Now let's talk about Dr. Casey Rogers. What do you know about Dr. Casey Rogers?
Well, I know that they're being paid for this litigation, first of all. And second of all, they claim to have done some sort of study about how Drufo is carcinogenic, but that study was never published nor peer-reviewed. And to my understanding, peer review is vital in science.
Okay. Now I would briefly like to talk about Dakota Weirs. What can you tell me about Ms. Weirs, in your knowledge?
Well, to my knowledge, Ms. Weirs was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I understand that's not genetic.
And how do you feel about Ms. Weirs?
God, I feel terrible for her. You know, I can't even begin to imagine what it's like being robbed of your youth and of your opportunities in life. And as one of our customers, I really feel for her, you know, and being diagnosed with cancer is just awful. And that's why our company takes necessary precautions to avoid this from happening.
And Ms. Doncourt, is there anything else you would like to state about your company?
As an avowed environmentalist and humanist, I would never put a product on the line that could be potentially dangerous to other people or the environment.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. Thank you, Your Honor. That is all.
Thank you. Ms. Kugler, Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Doncourt.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to begin by talking about Lush's finances and the process of creating Drufo. If in the production of Drufo you had chosen to bake it, that process would have made it completely safe and non-toxic, correct?
That's right.
And there was a level of toxicity in your fertilizer.
An insignificant one.
But there was a certain level of toxicity?
Tiny bit, yes.
You admit that you chose not to bake Drufo because of the cost.
Well, I wouldn't say it was because of financial motivation. It was just simply overkill.
But cost was a factor?
No, it's kind of bold to assume that I did have financial motivation for this.
So it's your statement here today that cost was not a factor in baking Drufo?
It might have been a factor, but it was not necessarily the biggest factor.
Yes, and you even did an analysis of the cost of baking fertilizer.
I did, as any company does.
This report has been marked as Exhibit 8. Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to constructively share Exhibit 8 to the witness.
Granted.
Ms. Doncourt, can you see that okay?
I can.
Do you recognize this?
I do.
What is it?
It's our amortization table.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of it?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time I move to admit Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 will be admitted.
Permission for my co-counsel to constructively publish to the jury.
Granted.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, this analysis shows that the company lose only $250,000 in the first year of baking Drufo.
That's right.
But you also say that your company has been so successful that you can give away 10% of your annual profits, which would have been roughly $167,000 $500 during that same first year.
That's right.
And Drufo isn't 100% safe, is it?
It isn't, but it's just such a minimal risk. There's no need to bake it.
Now, I'd like to focus in on the purpose behind baking Drufo. You claim that Drufo doesn't cause cancer, correct?
It doesn't.
But you also know that there was a risk to consumers.
Sure.
And
That's why we put precautions.
Yes, exactly. And baking Drufo was specifically suggested to you in your company's report?
Possibly, sure.
And even though it was safe, you still spent valuable time and money analyzing the cost of baking Drufo?
That's what any company does. So yes.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. Mr. Duran, is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, brief redirect. Ms. Doncourt, did you did you test your products?
We did twice.
All right. And in these tests, was there any cause or need for baking your products?
None at all.
Okay. So did you see any reason to bake this product?
Nope.
That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Kugler, any questions based on that?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Doncourt, thank you, and you're excused. We'll give the scoring panelists a minute to score. Okay, does defense have any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams?
All right, are our timekeepers ready? All right, fantastic. So, Dr. Williams, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Dr. Devin Williams. That's Williams.
Thank you. Could you tell us about your educational background?
Sure. I completed my undergrad through PhD at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. And I also did a specialized post-PhD program at the University of Utah in pharmacotoxicology.
And what about your professional background?
Well, I currently teach 4 courses at the University of New Mexico. I also lead the research and development labs for Lush Fertilizer.
And how long have you been at that job with Lush?
I've worked there for about 10 years, but I started leading the labs in 2003.
All right, at this time, I would like to ask you to turn to Exhibit 9. As previously stipulated, all parties and witnesses should have access to this exhibit. All right, do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
What is it?
It's my resume.
Is it an accurate representation of what you have said today regarding your education and previous work experience?
It is.
I would now like to move Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 will be admitted.
Thank you. So, Dr. Williams, do you have any publications or research?
I do. I have 6 of them.
And has your work been peer-reviewed?
It has.
And do you believe that your testimony will be helpful in assisting the judge or jury understand the facts of this case?
I do.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender this witness as an expert in the fields of toxicology and pharmacotoxicology.
Is there any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Brief voir dire.
You may voir dire.
Dr. Williams, you're not a medical doctor.
A medical doctor? No, I'm not.
You don't hold any degrees in training or human medicine.
I'm sorry, can I have you speak up for me, please?
Can we just stop time for a second? I'm getting, sounds like a wind blowing somewhere, and we're getting through a lot of background noise.
Your Honor, I do have an air vent above me right now.
Oh, okay. I think that's what I'm hearing. Okay, all right, go ahead. Back on the clock. Go ahead, Ms.
I will
Anderson.
speak up. Thank you, Your Honor. And you don't hold any degrees or training in human medicine?
Human medicine? No.
You haven't published any articles on non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Not non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but I do have a lot on chemicals and toxins.
But not on non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No.
And you haven't published any articles on any types of cancer?
Cancers? No, but that's not what I specialize in.
You mentioned in your witness statement having met this witness before today?
I'm sorry, which witness are you talking about?
Dakota Weirs. You don't mention in your witness statement having met this witness today.
I do not.
You don't mention reviewing their medical records?
No, but I'm not here to talk about Miss Weirs.
But you don't mention speaking with their doctor either.
Objection.
And the objection is?
Relevance. We are trying to have this witness as a expert in the fields of toxicology and pharmacotoxicology. This really has no, or doesn't have anything to do with whether or not Dr. Williams has reviewed Dakota's medical records.
Ms. Anderson?
I'll move on, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll sustain that objection.
Your Honor, the plaintiff does not object to Dr. Williams being admitted in expert pharmacology or toxicology, but the plaintiff does admit to Dr. Williams testifying as an expert in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or cancer in general, and specifically regarding Dakota Weirs, due to their lack of knowledge, skill, training, education, and experience in these areas.
Response, Ms. Sachs?
Your Honor, as I've said before, the defense is not trying to get Dr. Williams tendered as an expert in any type of medical field, only in the fields of toxicology and pharmacotoxicology.
Last word, Ms. Anderson?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor.
Okay. I believe that the witness is qualified under Rule 702 in the fields of toxicology and pharmacotoxicology. And will allow her to express opinions in those fields. If she strays from those, Ms. Anderson, you can re-raise your objection.
Thank you. So moving on, Dr. Williams, what did you do at Lush Fertilizer?
Well, I started as a technician for the Drufo development team, and then I got promoted to lead the labs and oversee environmental balances.
And can you tell us about the company's priorities at Lush for the development of Drufo?
Specifically for this groundbreaking chemical, we want to make sure that it's environmentally friendly and cost effective.
And do you believe that Drufo is safe for humans to use?
Yes, it hasn't been proven to have any statistically significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in humans.
But what about the plaintiff's claims saying that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats?
While our immune systems are somewhat similar, they are inherently different than rats. So we can't always use rats as our test subjects.
So since there are similarities, how can you be sure that something is carcinogenic in rats that is not also carcinogenic in humans?
This is a tricky question. We have to use rats because doing these tests on humans is highly unethical. But when we test rats, we test a couple of them or a few of them, and we test a lot of high dosages of these chemicals to make sure that we do actually get some sort of effect from their immune systems. Because we get some sort of effect, we make sure that we get some sort of effect from these rats. We can't always make sure that humans will have the same effects as these rats do.
All right, and earlier you said that there is not a statistically significant increase, but does this mean that there is at least some risk when using Drufo?
There's always going to be a risk, whether you use Drufo or you don't use Drufo. Say you take a small sample, say 100 people, and you divide that into two groups, 50-50. You have some that use Drufo and some that don't use Drufo. Both groups, some people in both groups are going to eventually develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
All right, and now let's focus on the potential toxicity of Drufo. What did you find?
Well, to understand Drufo, you really have to understand other fertilizers. Other fertilizers you have to constantly use, which creates a lot of runoff into our waters, which really isn't environmentally friendly. Drufo actually binds to our plants, and we don't have to use it as much, so that it creates less runoff and more environmentally friendly for us.
And is Drufo banned anywhere?
It is. It's banned in the EU.
And why is that?
Well, this concern has no causes of cancer whatsoever. In fact, the EU bureaucracy chose to prohibit the use of Drufo, which reduces the nitrogen in nature because it doesn't do so in their abstract lab tests. So the EU does have to do lab tests on Drufo, but these are completely abstract, and it doesn't really account for how Drufo works in the real world.
So in your studies, what other fertilizers did you compare Drufo to?
I compared Drufo to fertilizers that didn't even use it, which Dr. Rogers didn't use.
Do you know what methodologies he did use?
Well, from the little I know from their study, she used farmers and gardeners to regular people who aren't really around those kinds of pesticides. But she really only focused on these farmers and gardeners and other peoples that use Drufo. She didn't really have a control group, which, making a study, you always need to have a control group. If she would have compared apples to apples, she would have came to the same conclusion that I have, which there's no statistically significant increases that Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or any other cancer for that matter.
And is that your only problem with Dr. Rogers' study?
No, I have not found Dr. Rogers' study published anywhere. And I personally would try and replicate this study because this product, Drufo, it really is important to me to make sure that this is environmentally friendly and not harmful. But since I haven't found any publications, I can't replicate it, and neither can anyone else.
And what is your final stance on the use of Drufo?
Drufo is a revolutionary product, and it's groundbreaking, not for just my company, but for everyone who uses it. And I wish that we would look at Drufo more carefully into this case, not because some see that it might be carcinogenic, but because we're not really seeing all of DRUFO's aspects and how it works in the real world.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Anderson, you may cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to discuss the use of lush fertilizer in other countries. DRUFO has been banned in the entire European Union.
It is banned.
You claim that the reason DRUFO is banned, in France is because of nitrogen?
They do lab tests, and sure, if you put the right bacteria with DRUFO, you will find that it does come up with the same carcinogens as other fertilizers, but that's not the case in the real world.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. A yes or no will suffice. You're not a member of the EU Regulatory Board, are you?
I'm not.
Right. I want to talk about the testing phase of DRUFO at Lush. You said that when you joined Lush, 50% of the original DRUFO development team had already moved on to other ventures outside the company, yes?
Yes.
And your role was to fill in as a technician?
When I started, that was my role.
And you said that you were promoted to lead the lab, so your research was largely to oversee the environmental impacts.
Yes.
So you weren't a supervisor when DRUFO was tested for whether it causes cancer?
Are you talking about the in-house studies?
Yes.
Then no, I was not a part of those in-house studies.
Dr. Williams, you've critiqued Dr. Rogers' study for not being published or peer-reviewed.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that for me?
I'm so sorry. Is my audio being funky?
No, my air vent is just really loud. I'm sorry.
All right, I will speak up. Dr. Williams, you've critiqued Dr. Rogers' study for not being published or peer-reviewed.
Correct.
But Dr. Williams, we don't have any record of you publishing your research on DRUFO, do we?
I do not have any research on DRUFO.
And we don't have any peer reviews of your study either, do we?
All of the articles that I have published have been peer-reviewed.
Finally, I want to talk about the monetary incentives in this case. If Lush were to lose this case, would this hurt you financially?
Me, financially? I work at the University of New Mexico, so I do have another source of income.
But it would hurt you financially?
I wouldn't say that.
And you believe that if a U.S. court were to find that DRUFO causes cancer, it would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU?
Can you repeat that for me one more time, please?
And you believe that if a U.S. court were to find that DRUFO causes cancer, it would create a whole new host of bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU?
Yes, it would.
Meaning the company wouldn't be able to sell products that contain DRUFO in the EU.
Correct.
You're a paid employee of Lush?
Yes, they do pay me.
And you admit to having a financial bias in this case?
I mean, Lush Fertilizer pays me to work for their company. But other than that, no.
So you're saying you don't have a financial bias in this case?
I mean, all witnesses, all experts here get paid based on their testimony today.
All right. You made a statement in this case?
I did.
A statement which you swore to an oath to tell the truth?
I did.
The same oath you took today?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to constructively share a copy of the witness statement?
You got permission, go ahead.
Dr. Williams, can you please read along silently as I read aloud on line 118?
Wait a minute, I don't see it yet.
I'm so sorry.
No. Technology's not great, so.
One of those days.
Pause the time. Let's get the exhibit up and then we'll start the time again.
Thank you so much for your patience, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said, thank you so much for your patience, Your Honor.
Oh, no problem. All right, time has started. Go ahead.
As I said earlier, Dr. Williams, please read along silently as I lead around on line 118. I admit to having a financial bias in the outcome in this case. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Ms. Sachs, do you have any other redirect?
Yes, a brief redirect. So, Dr. Williams, what would it mean for the company if your study went through?
If my study went through, it means we would be able to finally sell products with Drufo to the BU, or the EU, sorry.
And is that the main goal of your study?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any recross based on those two questions?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, Dr. Williams, thank you for your testimony. You're excused. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Thank you. Let's take a minute and then we'll start with the closings. Timers will tell, timer scorekeepers, let me know when you're caught up. Okay, if the plaintiff's ready, we could start with the plaintiff's closing argument. Ms. Elizabeth Kruger, looks like. Oh, there you are. I'm gonna have to look at the, I had double screens, but I had to get rid of those when I had my computer up. So are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed when you're ready.
Before I begin, I'd like to remind the court that the plaintiff has reserved any additional remaining time for a rebuttal close.
Thank you for reminding me, but go ahead. You have reserved your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. And also, before I begin, may I just clarify that everyone can see and hear me okay?
I can, so I assume everyone else can, so you may proceed.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, today you hold the fate of Dakota Weir's life in your hands. A future that has been cut short by a company that carelessly cut corners only to avoid cutting into their own profits. Ms. Weirs has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a life-threatening disease that has destroyed her happiness and caused her incomparable physical, mental, and emotional pain and suffering. Today, we, the plaintiff, bear the burden of proof to show you by a preponderance of evidence that one of the stories here today is more than 50% true. That means if you believe Dakota's case is even 51% more likely than the wild theories provided by the defense, you must find Lush Fertilizer guilty of negligence. To return a verdict for Dakota, we must have demonstrated 4 things: that the defendant had a duty to protect consumers, that they breached that duty by neglecting safety concerns, that their failure caused Dakota suffering, and that suffering comes with damages. You've seen that Lush Fertilizer admits to cheaply manufacturing their product, cutting their costs by choosing not to bake a key ingredient of their fertilizer, Drufo. We have presented exhibits 1 and 2, showing Drufo as the main ingredient to Lush's product, and containing not even a whisper of a warning to any potential user of its cancer-causing nature. You've seen that Lush covered up the story of Carson Durst, a loyal employee cast aside for raising questions about studies the company itself conducted, and who was fired for voicing those concerns. And you have seen that the company put its image first, as they donated excess profits to charity rather than ensuring consumer safety. Lush dismissed the testimony of Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in carcinogenic products and chemicals. She testified through Exhibit 3 that prolonged exposure to Drufo created a clear and present risk of developing cancer, and that Ms. Weirs was a victim of that risk. But perhaps the most important thing this trial has given you is the testimony of 20-year-old Dakota Weirs. Through her words, you have heard how she has been broken by this disease and how she realized that the only clear connection to her illness was Drufo. She has lost so much. A cherished connection with her beloved grandfather through music, her ties to her community, the feeling of pride from an acceptance to Juilliard, and hope for a future career ripe with opportunity. But all of that has been replaced by mental depression, a future destroyed, and a diagnosis with almost no hope of recovery. Dakota has lost practically everything, and the damages from her life cut short are incalculable. So how can we, the plaintiff, ask you to place a number to this destruction? Well, all we have to do is look back at Lush's own chart in Exhibit 8 to see how much money the company would have saved by choosing not to bake their product. Saving money over saving lives. $16,115,795. Members of the jury, that is how much money the company of Lush Fertilizer Incorporated thought Dakota's life over 70 years was worth. And it is also the amount that we are asking you to return with today. On behalf of Dakota Weirs, we ask you to find for the plaintiff, because when corners are cut for the sake of costs, there must be a consequence for her life cut short. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. Ms. Dunham, give the timekeepers a second, and then I'll have you start. We got one ready. Do I have the other ready? There we go. Okay, Ms. Dunn, you may present your closing argument.
Thank you all for your time and attention today throughout the trial. There's no doubt that Dakota Weirs suffered a tragedy. It's horrific to see this pianist and young student watch as her life derails. And I understand that she's looking for someone to blame. She wants to explain the unexplainable and try and find peace with her diagnosis. But attacking a company because they have deep pockets is not the solution. We do not need more tragedy than what has already occurred. But now, those supporting the plaintiff are digging for it because they think there's a cash prize buried underneath. The plaintiff in today's trial must prove all of the following things with a preponderance of evidence. And as you will see, they failed to do so. The first is that my client was allegedly negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care to prevent our product from causing harm. But Lush has only ever been concerned with the safety of our users. As you heard from Blake Doncourt today, not one, but 2 in-house studies were conducted on the safety of Drufo and found that there was no connection between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, the plaintiff just tried to tell you that these studies are a point of concern, but is it unreasonable for a company to double check the safety of its own product, especially when that product is a chemical? Absolutely not. Even so, as you saw from Exhibit 1 today, Lush Fertilizer still placed a warning label on their product, advising all users to wear the appropriate protective gear, a warning label that was ultimately ignored by the plaintiff. Now, for those of you who've never taken a statistics course, one of the first crucial lessons you learn is that you cannot determine causation from an observational study. Dr. Casey Rogers, another witness who testified on the plaintiff's behalf today, undoubtedly spends her time undergoing important research. But her observational study on Drufo could only go so far as to, and to quote her, a mere correlation between Drufo and cancer. Another crucial lesson you learn in a statistics class: correlation cannot and will not ever guarantee causation. Any researcher, even Dr. Casey Rogers herself, understands that she cannot claim from her own study Drufo is the cause of this cancer. She proved nothing. Perhaps this is the reason the study wasn't even ever peer-reviewed or replicated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this mere speculation does not do well to qualify as a preponderance of the evidence. Now, additionally, the plaintiff must also prove that they had damages specifically caused by the defendant. Now, today, the plaintiff testified that she spent many years working for a landscaping company, and because of her age, worked primarily with fertilizers because she couldn't operate machinery. Essentially, she was exposed to a variety of chemicals, and these variety of chemicals had every chance to infect Miss Weirs because she failed time and time again to wear protective material. She did not wear gloves. She did not wear a mask. She did not wear long clothing to protect her skin. Now, as for Carson Durst, one of the witnesses you heard from today on Miss Weirs' behalf, well, she seems to be in the habit of breaking contracts, specifically that of non-compete agreements, as you've seen from Exhibit 5. If she can't be trusted to follow the instructions of a simple contract, how could she be trusted to diagnose the source of Miss Weirs' cancer? She is simply a woman working for a competing fertilizer company who is now latched onto Dakota Weirs' vulnerability and is using it as a petty excuse to leach cash from Lush Fertilizer. If there had been any substantial research proving Drufo was linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, there's no doubt that Lush Fertilizer would have taken any means necessary to remove that risk. You heard the testimony of Blake Doncourt. Lush Fertilizer is a company that protects, not harms. And though we regard Miss Weirs' diagnosis with sorrow, she is being used like a paper map on a treasure hunt for whatever wealth my client may have. The plaintiff has failed to put forth a preponderance of evidence suggesting that Drufo has a direct link to Miss Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and their claims of our negligence is fruitless. Fruitless when the science is false, fruitless when the research is incomplete, and fruitless when Lush Fertilizer gave Miss Weirs the opportunity to be safe, and she did not take it. For these reasons, we ask the jury to return a verdict in favor of the defendant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn.
Your Honor, before I begin, may I request a brief time check?
Yes, I was actually going to ask, so thank you for doing it. 39 seconds for one timer. Do both timers agree?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Yep, 39 seconds.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defense has tried to change your views on the clear-cut evidence that we have provided you here today, with speculation about causation and observation, unproved ideas about other fertilizers, and countless excuses about in-house studies. The defense has tried to paint our case as a cash grab, when in reality, the only thing the plaintiff is fighting for is justice. They have said that we are trying to explain the unexplainable, but here is where they are wrong. There is a clear explanation: Lush Fertilizer's negligence. We ask you once again to find for the plaintiff and bring Dakota justice. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. That concludes the trial. Are there any rule violations that anyone wants to bring to my attention? Seeing none, we'll wait and give the scoring panels time to get their scores done and submitted, and then we'll do some brief comments. I know you guys probably have had a long day and are tired and hungry, and I remember my students when I coached, this is the time I thought, oh, well, we made it halfway through, so I appreciate that. So, and I'm glad you're all getting back online here, and as soon as we get the scoring panelists, after you submitted your ballots, if you please, then turn on your video again. Oh, I know we got all three of you. Okay, looks like we got all the scores submitted. Any scoring panelists want to start? Okay, Kelsey, I'm going to pick on you then. And if you can, keep your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, somewhere in that range. It is late and these guys are going to want to go, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna try not to tell you guys too much. Obviously, you know, I'm sure you all have very great coaches who have been watching, and you should listen to them over us. Absolutely. I do want to say you guys did a really great job. It was very pleasant to watch. A very good round. So thank you for that. I do just want to hit on a couple of things I saw. Having done trials and been in trials, one of my very large pet peeves is anytime someone cuts off or talks over a witness, or the witness talks over the attorney. The problem is, if you have someone in the courtroom, if you have a court reporter, they will yell at you and tell you not to do that because they can't make a record. I've had judges yell at me because they say, we're recording this and you can't talk over someone. And it takes about one time to get yelled at by your judge before you realize, oh, don't talk over someone. So I'd be careful of that. It's something that a lot of trial attorneys are going to be a little nervous about. I also want to point out some really good things. You know, obviously I looked like some great emotion and passion in this case. I really appreciate seeing both sides in your closing. Obviously you can sit down, but it's nice to kind of stand up and so I can see some of your gestures and see what you're saying a little bit more. Other than that, I'm happy to hang around here for a minute if you have any specific questions, but I'll let your coaches do more of that. But overall, I think you guys did a really great job.
Thanks, Kelsey. Jason, you want to go next?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo a little bit of what Kelsey said. I thought y'all did a really great job. The evidence battles were fun to watch. Evidence is hard, and it was nice to see some of those battles. And I thought the cross examinations were good, and I really just wanted to echo what Kelsey said in terms of you just can't be cutting off the witness. I know it can be, you guys are under a time crunch, which is really hard. So when the witness kind of rambles on, it's a little bit hard on the clock, but the interrupting is just, it seems like you're almost scared of what the witness is going to say, and you should just embrace what they're going to say and then make a better point next time. So that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Chad.
Yeah, I certainly want to echo what the other scoring panelists have said about appreciating everyone's preparations, which were evident through both teams. I have a slightly different take on the interruptions. Not that interrupting is good, but I think there were some difficult witnesses in this case, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. I know when you're in actual trials, you do a lot to prep your own witnesses. So there's a fine line between having your witness present the case and being argumentative. Your witness ends up being too argumentative, especially if they're an expert. I find that the fact finders tend to turn them off because the witnesses, it becomes more clear that they've got an agenda rather than presenting the facts of the case. That's a fine balancing line that you have to work. And I know it's very difficult with cross-examination, keeping that witness directed while not being overbearing at the same time. But I think you all were clearly trying to do that, both with your voice and with your body language and hand signals. So good job dealing with those folks that aren't on your team to try to get your message across. I really liked the thematic messaging, plaintiffs using that cut theme, both verbally and with the gesturing in the opening and the close. I saw that. I thought that was very good to bring together. Defense close, I thought was very good, dealing with a lot of the points of law and weaving in the success or failure of the factual evidence, at least from the defense perspective, on how it met or failed those standards. As a fact finder, that's the box you keep coming back to. What do I need to find on this instruction? Do I check yes or no, and then move on to the next one? So I think that was very helpful as a jury member in how to get that done. But overall, very impressed with both the teams. Thank you very much.
So I'll be very brief, another 10 or 15 minutes, I'll let you out of here. Now, I want to be very brief. I want to cover a couple of things, and you have to excuse me, and your coaches are probably yelling at me because they have a different method of coaching than I did, but I always look at it from a coach's perspective when I do this. A couple of things that grab me that I want to talk about is fillers. Ian, and I'm going to pick out Ian and Emma because they're the ones that I notice it the most. And it's not that I'm trying to pick on you in anything other than trying to teach everyone how do you do it. Ian, you would, when you were crossing, you started almost every question with and Emma, you did every answer with well. And I used to always tell my students that you're not digging any wells and you're not eyeing anything. They're fillers and they're done because you're thinking while you're speaking. Stop, ask the question, stop, listen to the question, and answer the question. Don't put well in. It was one of my real pet peeves, well, in particular, in the ahs are something that happens. And what happens is I get focused on the ahs and the wells, and I'm not listening to what you're saying. So that's why it's not just a pet peeve. It really does impact like your presentation. For the most part, I think you guys got most of the objections that I saw. There were some hearsay objections that were missed. Just be careful of that. I know it's hard because it isn't quite the way you're used to practicing, and that's the nature of competition. The opinion that Dakota gave on the cause, I wrote that objection. I can't remember why I wrote that down. I just wrote that you should have objected to the cause, but I can't remember why. So just think about that. I apologize. I'm going to kind of follow up a little bit with terrible names. Let me just Chad, sorry, I don't remember who said this. Chad, and I agree with Kelsey and Jason, you don't want to interrupt witnesses, but you want to control. And one of the things that I always coached is how do you control witnesses without making the jury unhappy because you're interrupting, but showing that you are in control and not the witness. A couple of witnesses, and there's on both sides of the case, like to run, okay? And by running means is they never really answered the question. They went off on this tangent and went on, and it kills time. There were no time issues here. At least I wasn't aware of any. And watching the timers post their times, but maybe it did cause some issues. And it can if you let them run. So a couple of tactics are, excuse me, maybe misunderstood my question. You try that once because you always want to try to control it first. But I wouldn't do that consistently because then you're interrupting. So if that doesn't work, objection, Your Honor, I asked a clear yes or no question, or this question clearly called for this, and they're not answering that, or they've gone well beyond that. Most presiding judges in mock trial will say, ma'am witness or Mr. Witness, and listen to the question, answer that, and stop. Your attorney will have a chance to take it beyond that. If the judge then does that, witness, you better pay attention because if you breach it, you're telling the jury, I don't have to pay attention to that presiding judge. And all of us as lawyers know that's not something, as Kelsey mentioned, you don't want to get the judge angry at you, okay? So you want to be careful with that. The other thing that's important about running, it happens a lot in mock trial. Sometimes it's a coach style, sometimes it's nervousness, any of those things it could be. The problem with it is, particularly with experts, is you lose credibility. You know, if I'm not answering your question, I'm running off on a tangent, you told me that as a juror that, hey, they got you on that one and you're trying to divert the attention. Mock trial is written so that you're going to have junk in each of your affidavits. Admit the stuff you can admit and pick your battles, pick the important stuff. That's where you want to say, you know, you don't really understand what I said. Take an expert, you know, an expert, you get challenged and you got financial interest. My opinion is based on my expertise. It has nothing to do with money. That's a great answer for that question. And another great answer when they do something and they're trying to trap you, and I learned this from another coach that I work with over the years, the great answer is, excuse me, counsel, not exactly. What are they going to do if you say not exactly? You're not saying they agree or disagree. You're just saying you don't exactly agree with them. Force them to go there. That's the game that played between experts and other witnesses. You had good eye contact, but it's easier to do in video than otherwise. Watch and redirect leading questions. There are a lot of leading questions on redirect. It got better at the end, but the first 3 or 4 redirects is, isn't it true, blah, 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 blah. The attorney's testifying. You always ought to watch that when the other side's doing redirect, watch for that, because they're not prepped to do it sometimes. Sometimes there's, you've done and prepared for that. And I promise I'm going to wrap this up quickly so you guys get out of here. By the way, the non-compete clause, the covenant not to compete that's been breached, to me, I think the issue there is he's got a financial interest. Durst went out and got the other side, and he was going to use his expertise to make money. Otherwise, he didn't have a job. I think that's where you ought to be focusing on with that exhibit. That's why I think when I ruled on it, I said it goes to credibility. Good voir dire on the witnesses, and the one that's the doctor but not the doctor. The first 3 questions, the one that's a toxicologist and pharmacotoxicologist. First question was, tell me about the medical issues, and you let that get in. You didn't object to that, so you got to watch it. If you make the objection, stay with it. Closing good summaries. The openings, I thought you just got to make a decision, but sometimes you got to get those elements in, particularly at a place like this is what we have to prove today, and we're going to do that. And then at the conclusion, you bring it in. And I know 5 minutes is hard to get all that stuff in. And Ms. Dunn, I thought a great job of speeding up without speeding up and finishing in time on your closing. I thought you did a good job with that. So overall, this is a very difficult. Real lawyers have trouble proving product liability cases. And you guys did a nice job. And I want to congratulate you and good luck to you as you proceed through the tournament. Any questions of us you want to ask real quickly, and we'll let you go. You don't have to ask any questions, but we're happy to answer questions. All right, see none, and I know you want to eat dinner, so have a good evening and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. And thank you to all the scoring panelists as well.
You're welcome. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you to all the volunteers.